Picture yourself in a Viking longhouse, the fire spitting embers into the smoky haze, the air thick with the stench of sweat and salted fish. You're hunched over a bowl of stale bread and watery stew, praying it's not your last meal before a raid turns bloody. Across the table, your brother, Bjorn, sharpens his axe, his eyes glinting, not with brotherly love, but with a grudge over a botched trade deal that cost him a cow. One wrong word, and that axe might find your skull. Welcome to Viking life, a far cry from the glorified sagas of your cozy Netflix binges. This was a world of frostbitten fingers, blood-soaked battles, and betrayal as common as the wind. From starving winters to brutal feuds, survival meant dancing with death daily. Settle in, drift off, and let's unravel a saga that's equal parts epic, grim, and way harsher than any Viking cosplay could ever capture. The Viking Age conjures images of fierce warriors and longships, their axes gleaming under stormy skies, carving sagas of glory across the seas. Sounds like a blockbuster, right? But hold that thought, because real Viking life was less epic hero and more epic struggle. Picture a world where your next meal might be a frostbitten turnip, your neighbor could burn your house over a stray goat, and a bad winter meant choosing between starvation or raiding your cousin's village. This wasn't just adventure, it was survival, raw and relentless, where betrayal, brutality, and bone-chilling cold were as common as mead. Tonight, we're peeling back the Hollywood gloss to reveal the shocking truth of Viking life. The grueling daily grind, the bloody feuds, the desperate voyages, and the haunting fear of a forgotten name. Drop a comment if you think you could hack it in a longhouse with no Wi-Fi. Settle in, let the fjord's whispers lull you, and let's dive into a saga that's as grim as it is gripping. Viking life wasn't just a tale of swinging axes and sailing longships. It was a relentless war against a world that seemed determined to crush you. Before you could even think of raiding or trading, you had to survive the Norse landscape, a savage blend of ice, wind, and darkness that didn't give a damn if you were a warrior, farmer, or skald. The Scandinavian climate was like nature's cruelest bouncer, testing every Viking's mettle with winters that froze your marrow, summers that teased with fleeting warmth, and storms that could erase entire villages. Welcome to the first chapter of our journey into the brutal Norse world, where just waking up alive was a saga worth chanting. Close your eyes, let the howl of the fjords lull you, and let's plunge into the unforgiving climate that forged Viking survival. Picture a snow-choked valley in Norway, 900 CE, the sky a slab of iron gray, heavy with threat. A farmer, let's call him Eirik, 30, his back already hunched from years of toil, huddles in his turf-roofed longhouse, the fire spitting embers into the smoky haze. Outside, a blizzard screams through the fjord, wind clawing at the walls like a pack of spectral wolves. The cold is so fierce it's frozen Eirik's beard into brittle spikes, and the sheep penned inside bleat in panic, their breath steaming in the dim light. His wife Astrid wraps their son, Leif, in threadbare furs, but the boy's fingers are blue, his small frame shivering despite her embrace. The family's grain sack is nearly empty, the fjord's iced over, and the nearest village is a day's trek through snowdrifts deep enough to swallow a man whole. Eirik grips his axe, not for battle but to hack at frozen logs for firewood, knowing one slip on the ice could mean his family's end. This isn't the cozy Nordic aesthetic of your favorite sweater ad. It's a winter that'd make your heated socks look like a gift from Odin himself. Talk about a morning where rise and grind means don't let your kid freeze to death. Winters were the Norse world's ultimate crucible, stretching 6 months or more in Scandinavia's northern reaches, from October to April. Temperatures could dive to minus 30 degrees Celsius, snow piling higher than a longhouse's roof, and darkness smothered the land for up to 20 hours a day in places like Tromsø. The Heimskringla, a saga collection, paints winters so savage that cattle starved in their stalls, and men resorted to gnawing tree bark to quell hunger pangs. Eirik's family faced this annually, rationing watery barley porridge and scraps of dried cod, their faces gaunt as they prayed the hearth's glow wouldn't fade. Frostbite was a relentless hunter. Archaeological digs at Ribe reveal Viking skeletons with amputated toes and fingers, blackened by cold's bite. One winter, Eirik's neighbor, Thorvald, lost his left hand to gangrene after a storm trapped him outside for a night. The village skald spun it as a heroic sacrifice to Aegir, but Eirik saw Thorvald's grimace, his stump wrapped in rags, no longer able to wield an axe. It's like living in a deep freezer with no off button, where your survival kit's a flint, some furs, and a whole lot of stubbornness. The cold wasn't just a physical assault, it was a mental siege. The long dark, or polar night in northern Norway, cloaked the world in gloom, crushing spirits as surely as ice crushed bones. Vikings whispered of Draugr, walking dead, roaming the endless night, their hollow eyes glowing in the snow. Eirik sat by the fire, weaving tales of Thor's hammer to keep Leif's courage up, but his own dreams were plagued by shadows, hunger gnawing at his sleep. Astrid once woke screaming, swearing a Draugr's claw scraped the door. Eirik checked. Nothing but wind whistling through cracks, but he carved a Thor's hammer rune into the lintel, his hands trembling. Modern studies link prolonged darkness to seasonal depression, but Vikings had no therapy, just mead, stories, and gritted teeth. One elder, Sigrid, stopped speaking midwinter, staring at the fire until spring. The village called her touched by hell, but Eirik knew she'd just run out of fight. Drop a comment if you'd last a week in a Norse winter with no Netflix to keep the demons at bay. Yeah, didn't think so. Summers were no sanctuary, just a frantic sprint to grow enough food before the cold's return. Norway's rocky soil, Iceland's volcanic ash, and Denmark's bogs offered scant mercy, with a growing season as short as 3 months in the far north. Eirik plowed fields of barley and oats, his hands blistered from the wooden ard, knowing a late frost could kill the sprouts. The annals of Ulster record famines when summers failed, and Viking graves from Hedeby show malnutrition, stunted bones, teeth worn from chewing grit. One summer, a hailstorm shredded Eirik's barley, leaving stalks like broken spears. He salvaged half, but Astrid's cheeks hollowed, her milk for Leif drying up. They boiled seaweed, its slimy bitterness a grim staple, to stretch the stores. Eirik's cousin, Ingrid, lost her harvest to drought. She traded her silver brooch for grain, her pride crumbling. It's like playing Stardew Valley on hardcore mode, where a bad season means your family starves, and there's no save file to reload. Storms were the climate's wild card, striking sea and land with indiscriminate fury. The North Sea's gales could whip waves into towering walls, splintering longships or flooding coastal farms. The saga of the Greenlanders mourns fleets lost to tempests. Crews vanished without a trace. Eirik's village faced a storm surge that drowned his goats, their bloated bodies washing up on the fjord's edge. He rebuilt the pens, cursing Jord, the sea god, but the loss meant no meat for months. Inland, blizzards buried paths. Once, Eirik trekked to trade furs but was trapped in a drift, his legs numb. He burned his cloak for warmth, surviving, but the frostbite scarred his toes. Archaeological sites like Jorvik show flood-damaged homes, proof of nature's wrath. It's like checking the weather app and finding apocalypse scheduled for Tuesday. Here's a shocker to jolt you awake, or at least intrigued: the climate-fueled Viking raids. Harsh winters and failed harvests drove men like Eirik to sail, desperate for loot to feed their kin. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle notes raids spiking after lean years, like the 793 CE sacking of Lindisfarne. Eirik joined a raid after a famine winter, his stomach a knot as he boarded a longship. He returned with silver and a gash on his arm, but 3 friends fell to Saxon spears. The Skald sang of glory on the waves, but Eirik's hands shook, blood caked under his nails. Raiding wasn't a choice, it was a necessity, born of a land that starved its own. It's like turning to a heist because your fridge is empty, and the grocery store's locked in ice. Eirik's saga paints the stakes. One winter, the fire sputtered out, and Leif's cough turned wet, his small chest heaving. Astrid boiled bones for broth, her eyes red, but the boy faded. Eirik trekked through drifts to a healer, trading his best knife, an heirloom from his father, for herbs that smelled of earth and hope. Leif lived, but Eirik's hair grayed, His back bent further under the weight of another season survived. The village lost half its elders that year, their names fading from the skald's songs like breath in the cold. Excavations at Birka uncover mass graves from famine winters, bones tangled in silent despair, some clutching Thor's hammer pendants, as if faith could thaw the ground. Let's drift deeper into this frozen world. The Norse revered their gods, Thor for thunder, Freyr for harvests, Jord for winds, but the climate mocked their prayers. Eirik offered a goat to Freyr for a bountiful summer, but hail fell, shattering his hopes. The village seer, Frida, demanded a cow to appease the frost giants. Eirik slaughtered his last heifer, the family's milk gone, but the snow came early. Frida's eyes glinted, power, not prophecy, and Eirik carved a rune to ward off her curses, his faith fraying. Runestones across Scandinavia, like the rock stone from 800 CE, plead for divine aid against cold and hunger, their angular script a cry into the void. Modern paleoclimatology reveals the Viking Age's volatility. Cooler temperatures from the 8th to 10th centuries, erratic rains that drowned or dried fields. Eirik didn't know of Little Ice Age precursors, but he knew the ache of empty bowls, the sting of frost on his calloused hands. The climate shaped more than survival. It sculpted Viking identity. Winters forged their resilience, summers their urgency, storms their daring. The Edda poems praise men who laughed at cold, but Eirik's laughter was grim, a defiance against a world that offered no mercy. Festivals like Yule, midwinter, were less celebration and more survival, with feasts of slaughtered livestock, animals they couldn't feed till spring. Eirik carved a boar's head for Yule, telling Leif of Freyr's golden boar, but the meat was tough, the fire weak. The village drank mead, singing of Valhalla, but their voices cracked, hunger lurking behind every toast. Archaeological finds from Uppsala show sacrificial pits, horses, dogs, even humans, offered to appease the gods for milder seasons. One winter, Eirik's village sacrificed a thrall, his screams drowned by drums. Eirik looked away, but the gods stayed silent. As we float through this icy haze, picture Eirik by his flickering hearth, Leif shivering in his arms, Astrid's hands clutching a frayed fur, the wind howling like a draugr's wail. He's not just a farmer, he's a warrior, every breath a rebellion against the cold, every flame a fragile victory over the dark. The Norse climate was a merciless crucible, forging Vikings through hunger, frost, and despair. Drop a comment if you'd trade your thermostat for a turf roof and a half-hearted prayer to Thor. Drop another if you think you'd keep your cool when the draugr knock. This was the cost of living in the Norse world, a soul-deep fight against nature's wrath. If you think that's brutal, brace yourself, because building a life in this frozen hell was its own savage ordeal. If surviving the Norse climate was like staring down a frost giant, carving out a life in that unforgiving land was like wrestling it with one hand tied behind your back. Viking homesteads weren't the cozy cabins of your Pinterest dreams, with crackling fires and woven rugs. They were ramshackle strongholds against a world that wanted you dead. Turf longhouses leaked, farms barely fed a family, and every day was a punishing slog of mending, sewing, and praying your kin didn't turn on you over a missing axe. This was no idyllic farmstead. It was a battleground where you fought hunger, cold, and your own blood just to keep the roof from caving in. Welcome to the grueling world of the Norse homestead, where home sweet home was more like home still standing barely. Let's drift into this rugged saga, lulled by the creak of timber and the wind's mournful wail. Picture a sod-roofed longhouse perched on Iceland's volcanic plain, 950 CE, its walls sagging under a damp, mossy turf roof. Eirik, now 35, his hands calloused like old leather, kneels by a smoky hearth, patching a broken loom with a bone needle. The single room, dark, cramped, reeking of salted fish, wet wool, and human sweat, is home to his family, their livestock, and a thriving colony of fleas. Astrid, his wife, weaves coarse wool into cloth, her fingers raw and bleeding from the spindle, while their son, Leif, 10, scatters grain for the chickens scratching in the corner, their clucks drowned by the wind rattling the wooden door. The turf roof leaks, dripping icy water onto the packed dirt floor, turning it to mud. The fire's too weak to dry the damp, and Eirik's brother-in-law, Olaf, sprawls by the hearth, his snores a nightly irritant. Last week, Olaf borrowed Eirik's best axe without asking, sparking a shouting match that ended with knives half drawn. This isn't a Hallmark homestead, it's a pressure cooker where survival's a team sport, and your teammates are one bad day from shanking you. Talk about a home life that'd make your noisy upstairs neighbor feel like a gift from Freya. Longhouses with a beating heart of Viking life, but calling them architecture is generous. Built from whatever the land coughed up. Timber in Norway, stone in Denmark, turf in Iceland. They were low-slung, windowless, and smoky, with a central hearth venting through a roof hole that often clogged, stinging eyes and lungs. The saga of Eirik the Red describes homes so choked with smoke that breathing was a chore, and digs at Lansiux's meadows reveal dirt floors hardened by feet, filth, and spilled mead. Eirik's longhouse, a 40-foot rectangle, crammed 10 souls. Eirik, Astrid, Leif, Olaf, Astrid's mother, and cousins, plus sheep and chickens for warmth. Privacy was a myth. Every cough, argument, or midnight stumble to the latrine was a public broadcast. Astrid once snapped at Olaf for belching during a meal. He laughed, but Eirik caught his hand twitching toward his dagger. One night, Leif overheard Olaf muttering about taking what's owed. Eirik slept with his axe closer after that. It's like cramming your extended family, a petting zoo, and a grudge into a studio apartment with no walls. Building a homestead was a soul-crushing ordeal. Iceland's timber was scarce, so Eirik cut sod from the tundra, stacking it into walls that slumped in rain like a drunkard. The turf roof, layered with grass, sprouted weeds but leaked relentlessly, dripping onto Leif's furs during storms. Eirik patched it, his hands torn by sharp grass, cursing Thor's hammer under his breath. One winter, a gale ripped a hole, soaking the family's bedding. Astrid dried it by the fire, her eyes red, while Eirik rebuilt, trading a wool cloak for extra turf. Tools, axes, adzes, augers, were hand-forged iron, rare and precious. Eirik's adze snapped once. He bartered a sheep for a new one, leaving the family without mutton for a season. Excavations at Birka show worn tools, edges dulled by endless hacking at stone and wood. Maintenance was eternal. Walls crumbled, roofs rotted, and mice gnawed at timbers. Astrid waged war on rats eating their grain, setting traps that caught more fingers than pests. It's like a DIY Reno show where your budget's zero, your materials are mud, and your deadline survival. Farming was the homestead's brutal core, a gamble against Iceland's thin volcanic soil, Norway's rocky slopes, or Denmark's waterlogged bogs. Eirik scratched fields for barley, oats, and rye, using a wooden ard that splintered on stones. Seeds were sown by hand, each kernel a prayer against frost or flood. Harvests, reaped with sickles, were meager. Viking farms yielded half what Roman ones did, pergulating law records. One summer, a late frost killed Eirik's oats. He traded his best cloak for a sack of grain, shivering through winter to keep Leif fed. Astrid's face thinned, her milk for their infant daughter, Sigrid, drying up. They boiled nettles, their bitter sting a grim meal, to stretch the stores. Livestock, cows, sheep, pigs, were lifelines but fragile. A cow fell ill, its milk souring. Eirik slit its throat, salting the meat, but Astrid wept, knowing Sigrid would go hungry. Viking graves from Hedeby show malnutrition. Teeth ground to stubs, bones brittle from lean years. It's like homesteading on a moonscape, where your garden's a rock pile and your pantry's a pipe dream. Here's a shocker to keep you gripped. Homesteads were powder kegs for violence. Cramped quarters, scarce resources, and frayed tempers turned kin into enemies. The Njal saga recounts feuds erupting over stolen wood or trampled fields, ending in blood-soaked halls. Eirik and Olaf clashed when Olaf's cow wandered into Eirik's barley patch, munching half the crop. Eirik swung his axe, missing Olaf's skull by inches. Astrid's scream halted them, but the rift festered. Olaf moved to a shack, taking Eirik's second-best knife, by right. Weeks later, Olaf's barn burned, storm or spite. Eirik stayed silent, his hands trembling as he sharpened his blade. Archaeological sites like Stong show longhouse beams scarred by weapons, proof of domestic wars. One night, Astrid found Leif clutching a dagger, swearing to settle Olaf's theft. Eirik took the blade, but fear settled in his gut. His son was learning the homestead's brutal code. Drop a comment if you'd share a room with a guy who steals your axe and eyes your grain. Yeah, thought so. The social toll was devastating. Women like Astrid bore a crushing load, spinning wool, weaving cloth, brewing mead, cooking porridge, birthing children, all in a smoky, flea-ridden hovel. The Laxdala saga praises women's endurance but notes their graves. Females dead by 30, spines curved from grinding grain, hands arthritic from looms. Astrid's sister, Ingrid, died in childbirth, her baby stillborn. Eirik buried them under a cairn, carving a rune, but the village forgot her name, her loom gathering dust. Astrid's mother, Freya, coughed blood one winter, her lungs scarred by smoke. Eirik traded a ram for a seer's herbs, but Freya died, her last words a plea for Leif's future. If surviving the Norse climate was like staring down a frost giant, carving out a life in that unforgiving land was like wrestling it with one hand tied behind your back. Viking homesteads weren't the cozy cabins of your Pinterest dreams, with crackling fires and woven rugs. They were ramshackle strongholds against a world that wanted you dead. Turf longhouses leaked, farms barely fed a family, and every day was a punishing slog of mending, sewing, and praying your kin didn't turn on you over a missing axe. This was no idyllic farmstead. It was a battleground where you fought hunger, cold, and your own blood just to keep the roof from caving in. Welcome to the grueling world of the Norse homestead, where home sweet home was more like home still standing barely. Let's drift into this rugged saga, lulled by the creak of timber and the wind's mournful wail. Picture a sod-roof longhouse perched on Iceland's volcanic plain, 950 CE, its walls sagging under a damp, mossy turf roof. Eirik, now 35, his hands calloused like old leather, kneels by a smoky hearth, patching a broken loom with a bone needle. The single room, dark, cramped, reeking of salted fish, wet wool, and human sweat, is home to his family, their livestock, and a thriving colony of fleas. Astrid, his wife, weaves coarse wool into cloth, her fingers raw and bleeding from the spindle, while their son, Leif, 10, scatters grain for the chickens scratching in the corner, their clucks drowned by the wind rattling the wooden door. The turf roof leaks, dripping icy water onto the packed dirt floor, turning it to mud. The fire's too weak to dry the damp, and Eirik's brother-in-law, Olaf, sprawls by the hearth, his snores a nightly irritant. Last week, Olaf borrowed Eirik's best axe without asking, sparking a shouting match that ended with knives half drawn. This isn't a Hallmark homestead, it's a pressure cooker where survival's a team sport, and your teammates are one bad day from shanking you. Talk about a home life that'd make your noisy upstairs neighbor feel like a gift from Freya. Longhouses with a beating heart of Viking life, but calling them architecture is generous. Built from whatever the land coughed up, timber in Norway, stone in Denmark, turf in Iceland. They were low-slung, windowless, and smoky, with a central hearth venting through a roof hole that often clogged, stinging eyes and lungs. The saga of Eirik the Red describes homes so choked with smoke that breathing was a chore, and digs at Lansiux meadows reveal dirt floors hardened by feet, filth, and spilled mead. Eirik's longhouse, a 40-foot rectangle, crammed 10 souls: Eirik, Astrid, Leif, Olaf, Astrid's mother, and cousins, plus sheep and chickens for warmth. Privacy was a myth. Every cough, argument, or midnight stumble to the latrine was a public broadcast. Astrid once snapped at Olaf for belching during a meal. He laughed, but Eirik caught his hand twitching toward his dagger. One night, Leif overheard Olaf muttering about taking what's owed. Eirik slept with his axe closer after that. It's like cramming your extended family, a petting zoo, and a grudge into a studio apartment with no walls. Building a homestead was a soul-crushing ordeal. Iceland's timber was scarce, so Eirik cut sod from the tundra, stacking it into walls that slumped in rain like a drunkard. The turf roof, layered with grass, sprouted weeds but leaked relentlessly, dripping onto Leif's furs during storms. Eirik patched it, his hands torn by sharp grass, cursing Thor's hammer under his breath. One winter, a gale ripped a hole, soaking the family's bedding. Astrid dried it by the fire, her eyes red, while Eirik rebuilt, trading a wool cloak for extra turf. Tools, axes, adzes, augers, were hand-forged iron, rare and precious. Eirik's adze snapped once. He bartered a sheep for a new one, leaving the family without mutton for a season. Excavations at Birka show worn tools, edges dulled by endless hacking at stone and wood. Maintenance was eternal. Walls crumbled, roofs rotted, and mice gnawed at timbers. Astrid waged war on rats eating their grain, setting traps that caught more fingers than pests. It's like a DIY Reno show where your budget's zero, your materials are mud, and your deadline survival. Farming was the homestead's brutal core, a gamble against Iceland's thin volcanic soil, Norway's rocky slopes, or Denmark's waterlogged bogs. Eirik scratched fields for barley, oats, and rye, using a wooden ard that splintered on stones. Seeds were sown by hand, each kernel a prayer against frost or flood. Harvests, reaped with sickles, were meager. Viking farms yielded half what Roman ones did, per Guelathing law records. One summer, a late frost killed Eirik's oats. He traded his best cloak for a sack of grain, shivering through winter to keep Leif fed. Astrid's face thinned, her milk for their infant daughter, Sigrid, drying up. They boiled nettles, their bitter sting a grim meal, to stretch the stores. Livestock, cows, sheep, pigs, were lifelines but fragile. A cow fell ill, its milk souring. Eirik slit its throat, salting the meat, but Astrid wept, knowing Sigrid would go hungry. Viking graves from Hedeby show malnutrition. Teeth ground to stubs, bones brittle from lean years. It's like homesteading on a moonscape, where your garden's a rock pile and your pantry's a pipe dream. Here's a shocker to keep you gripped. Homesteads were powder kegs for violence. Cramped quarters, scarce resources, and frayed tempers turned kin into enemies. The Njal saga recounts feuds erupting over stolen wood or trampled fields, ending in blood-soaked halls. Eirik and Olaf clashed when Olaf's cow wandered into Eirik's barley patch, munching half the crop. Eirik swung his axe, missing Olaf's skull by inches. Astrid's scream halted them, but the rift festered. Olaf moved to a shack, taking Eirik's second-best knife, by right. Weeks later, Olaf's barn burned, storm or spite. Eirik stayed silent, his hands trembling as he sharpened his blade. Archaeological sites like Stong show longhouse beams scarred by weapons, proof of domestic wars. One night, Astrid found Leif clutching a dagger, swearing to settle Olaf's theft. Eirik took the blade, but fear settled in his gut. His son was learning the homestead's brutal code. Drop a comment if you'd share a room with a guy who steals your axe and eyes your grain. Yeah, thought so. The social toll was devastating. Women like Astrid bore a crushing load, spinning wool, weaving cloth, brewing mead, cooking porridge, birthing children, all in a smoky, flea-ridden hovel. The Laxdala saga praises women's endurance but notes their graves. Females dead by 30, spines curved from grinding grain, hands arthritic from looms. Astrid's sister, Ingrid, died in childbirth, her baby stillborn. Eirik buried them under a cairn, carving a rune, but the village forgot her name, her loom gathering dust. Astrid's mother, Freya, coughed blood one winter, her lungs scarred by smoke. Eirik traded a ram for a seer's herbs, but Freya died, her last words a plea for Leif's future. Men faced shame if the homestead failed. Eirik's neighbor, Gudmund, lost his farm to debt after a flood. He drowned himself in the fjord, leaving his children to beg at markets. The skalds didn't sing of him, his name erased like footprints in snow. It's like running a family business where failure's not bankruptcy, it's oblivion, and your kids pay the price. Let's drift deeper into this world of toil. Vikings leaned on their gods, Freyr for fertile fields, Thor for strength, but the homestead laughed at their offerings. Eirik sacrificed a chicken to Freyr for a good harvest, but rats devoured the seeds anyway. The seer, Frida, demanded a cow to bless the soil. Eirik refused, and Frida cursed his fields, her eyes glinting with malice. The next harvest was meager. Was it her hex or the land's stinginess? Eirik carved a rune to appease her, his faith wavering. Runestones, like the Glavendrup stone, beg Freyr for bounty, their inscriptions desperate. Soil studies show Scandinavia's poor fertility, volcanic ash in Iceland, granite in Norway. Eirik didn't know geology, just the ache of empty hands, the weight of Astrid's silent hunger. The homestead shaped Viking values, hospitality, loyalty, endurance, but at a cost. Guests were sacred, per the Havamal, but feeding them strained stores. Eirik hosted a trader, sharing his last fish, but Olaf grumbled, hiding his mead. The trader left a bronze pin, but the tension lingered, Olaf's glare sharper than ever. Feuds over resources were law-bound. The Gragas Code fined crop theft but allowed duels. Eirik's uncle settled a grazing dispute with a sword, losing an eye. The village cheered his honor, but his farm faltered, his kids sold as thralls. Digs at Trelleborg show communal ovens, hinting at shared labor, but also charred homes, proof of feuds. Astrid once mediated a fight over a shared plow, her voice steady, but her hands shook. She knew one spark could burn the village down. As we float through this smoky longhouse, picture Eirik by the hearth, the loom creaking under Astrid's raw hands, Leif's eyes hard as he guards the grain, Olaf's shadow looming. He's not just a farmer. He's a warrior, every repair a skirmish, every meal a hard-won truce. The homestead was a crucible, forging Vikings through sweat, scarcity, and simmering hate. Drop a comment if you'd trade your couch for a turf roof and a family feud. Drop another if you'd keep your cool when your brother-in-law's plotting over porridge. This was the cost of a Norse home, a life of labor, bound by hunger and hard-won hope. If you think that's rough, brace yourself, because venturing beyond this fragile refuge was a whole new kind of nightmare. If the Norse homestead was a grueling test of endurance, stepping beyond its sagging walls was like tossing your fate to the gods and hoping they weren't in a foul mood. Vikings are legendary for their longships, slicing through seas to raid, trade, or chase new horizons. But travel in the Norse world was no swashbuckling adventure. It was a deadly gauntlet of storms, starvation, and betrayal that could snuff you out faster than a Saxon spear or a bandit's blade. Whether sailing treacherous waters or trudging through bandit-infested trails, every journey was a high-stakes gamble that tested a Viking's nerve, luck, and the fragile bonds of loyalty. From icy waves that shattered hulls to bogs that swallowed carts, travel was the Norse world's ultimate crucible. Welcome to the perilous saga of Viking voyages, where the road, or sea, was as merciless as the land left behind. Let's sail into this treacherous tale, lulled by the creak of oars and the sea's hungry roar. Picture a windswept fjord in Denmark, 920 CE, the dawn sky bruised purple, heavy with menace. Eirik, now 40, his face etched with salt and worry, stands on a pebbled shore, his wool cloak flapping as he boards a longship, its dragon prow snarling against the waves. His crew, 20 men, including his cousin Harold, a broad-shouldered trader with shifty eyes, ready oars for a run to Birka, a Swedish market 300 miles across the Baltic. The ship's laden with furs, amber beads, and dreams of silver, but Eirik's gut twists like a knotted rope. The sea's restless, clouds churn like smoke, and Harold's been too quiet, his hand lingering on his axe as if weighing its swing. Astrid, back on shore, clutches Leif, now 15 and itching to sail, her eyes wet with a fear she won't name. Too many ships vanish, their crews lost to the deep. Eirik grips his Thor's hammer pendant, whispering to Njord for calm seas, but the waves growl, indifferent to gods or men. This isn't a Viking road trip with a playlist and snacks. It's a gamble where the toll might be your bones bleaching on some forgotten shore. Talk about a commute that'd make your delayed train feel like a chariot ride with Freya. Sea travel was the Vikings' lifeline, knitting their world of fjords, islands, and far-off markets. But the North Sea and Baltic were unforgiving beasts. Longships, sleek and shallow-drafted, danced over waves with grace, their clinker-built oak planks flexing like living skin. But storms could turn them to kindling. The saga of the Greenlanders mourns fleets lost to gales, entire crews swallowed by waves that rose like Jormungandr, the world serpent. Eirik's ship, a 60-foot Snekja, leaked despite pine tar caulking, and bailing water was a full-time job. One squall hit mid-voyage, tossing the ship like a child's toy, snapping an oar and cracking Harold's rib against the mast. Eirik steered, soaked to his marrow, shivering as waves loomed like frost giants. His hands bled from the tiller, salt stinging the cuts, but he couldn't falter. Captains don't flinch. Archaeological wrecks, like the Skuldalef ships unearthed in Roskilde, show patched hulls and splintered keels, scars of relentless battering. Drowning was a common fate. Viking graves hold few old sailors, their runestones lamenting men, taken by Ran, the sea goddess. Eirik's uncle, Bjarni, vanished on a trade run to Dublin, his name unsung, his longship likely a reef's trophy. It's like sailing a rowboat in a hurricane, with no coast guard, no life vest, just a prayer and a bucket. Starvation was a silent killer on the waves. Ships carried dried cod, flatbread, and sour mead, but rations dwindled on long hauls. The Erbigja saga tells of crews so desperate they chewed leather sails, their teeth breaking on the hide. Eirik packed enough for a week, but headwinds stretched the Birka run to 12 days. By day 10, the men gnawed bootlaces, their eyes sunken, bellies clawing at their spines. Leif, training his crew, vomited from hunger, his young face pale. Eirik shared his last crust, hiding his own cramps, his ribs sharp under his tunic. Scurvy, unknown to Vikings, rotted gums. Graves from Gotland show blackened teeth, jaws pitted by disease. One sailor, Gunnar, went mad, stealing a fish from the hold. Eirik bound him to the mast, his screams piercing the fog, but the crew's eyes stayed hard. Hunger forgives no thief. Another man, Torstein, offered his silver ring for a bite. Eirik refused, but the gesture haunted him. It's like a road trip with no gas stations, where your snacks are your shoes, and your co-pilot's eyeing your last granola bar. Here's a shocker to keep you hooked. Betrayal was as deadly as any storm. Crews were kin or sworn oath men, bound by blood or honor, but greed and desperation fractured those ties. The saga of Grettir the Strong recounts sailors murdering for loot, their blades flashing under moonless skies. Harald, Eirik's cousin, coveted the amber cargo, muttering about fair shares as he sharpened his axe by the firelight. One night, off Gotland's coast, he drew his knife, demanding half the furs. Eirik disarmed him, sparing his life for Astrid's sake, but trust shattered like ice under a hammer. Harald deserted at Birka, slipping away with a bale of fox pelts, his betrayal a wound deeper than any blade. Eirik sailed home, his crew's eyes wary. Would another turn? Runestones like the Vastra Stro stone-mourn men, lost to treachery, their names carved in warning. The annals of St. Bertan hint at Viking crews turning on captains, splitting loot in blood. Eirik's father once survived a mutiny, his scar a lifelong reminder. Drop a comment if you'd sail with a guy who's eyeing your cargo like it's his birthright. Yeah, didn't think so. Land travel was no less perilous, a slog through forests, bogs, and mountains where bandits lurked like wolves. The saga of Egil Skallagrimson describes ambushes on trade routes, travelers gutted for a sack of wool. Eirik trekked to a market in Hedeby, his ox cart groaning with wool bolts, Leif at his side. Wolves howled in the pines, but men were the real threat. 3 bandits struck at dusk, their knives glinting in the firelight. Eirik fought, his axe biting into one's shoulder, blood spraying the frost. He took a gash to his arm, the pain a white-hot scream, but drove them off, Leif's dagger shaking in his small hand. The scar lingered, a road map of the trail's teeth. Bogs were another hazard. Carts sank in peat, swallowing goods. One trip, Eirik's cart bogged down, the axle cracking. He lost half his wool, trading his silver arm ring to free the cart, his pride sinking with it. Archaeological finds from Ribe show wheels trapped in bogs, their owners likely dead. It's like hiking with your life savings strapped to your back, knowing every shadow's a mugger and every step's a trap. Navigation was a blind gamble. Vikings used sunstones, calcite crystals, to find the sun in fog, and stars or ravens to guide ships, but clouds or storms erased those signs. The Vinland sagas tell of Leif Erikson drifting off course, stumbling onto America by sheer luck. Eirik's crew misread the stars, veering toward Gotland's rocky shores. They corrected, but lost 3 days, rations thinning to crumbs. Landmarks failed too. Eirik's market trail flooded, erasing paths through the spruce. He wandered, Leif shivering at his side, until a farmer, Ulf, guided them, for a steep price of 2 furs. Ulf's smirk said he'd have left them lost for less. Viking maps were oral, passed in skaldic verse, but errors were fatal. The saga of Olaf Tryggvason notes a chieftain stranded in Orkney, his crew starving. Eirik's father taught him star lore, but one fog-bound night, Eirik rode blind, praying for land. It's like using a half-remembered Siri with no signal, and the destination's your life. The toll was soul-crushing. Sailors returned gaunt, scarred, or not at all. Eirik's friend, Sigurd, sailed to England for wool but drowned in a North Sea gale. His wife, Gudrun, wove his shroud, her loom trembling with grief. Her children left to beg. Land travelers face disease. Graves from Uppsala show smallpox scars, bones pitted by fever. Eirik's arm wound festered, Astrid's nettle poultice barely saving it. The scar puckered, a reminder of the road's bite. The Gesta de Nora mourns travelers dead of plague, their names fading like sea foam. Leif, hardened by voyages, grew quiet, his boyish laugh gone. Eirik saw his own youth in Leif's eyes, stolen by the sea's grind. One sailor, Bjorn, returned from a raid with silver but a hacked-off ear, his smile gone. He drank himself dead, the skald silent. It's like a commute where the destination's survival, and the fare's your soul, paid in scars and silence. Let's drift deeper into this perilous world. Vikings prayed to Njord for calm seas, Thor for courage, but the gods were as fickle as the waves. Eirik offered a silver ring to Njord before Birka, but the Baltic roared anyway. The seer, Frida, demanded a goat for safe winds, her voice sharp as a blade. Eirik paid, slaughtering a kid, but a squall struck, splintering the mast. Frida's eyes glinted, power, not prophecy, and Eirik carved a rune to ward her off, his faith a frayed rope. Runestones, like the Gardstanga stone, beg for divine protection, their carvings desperate. Modern oceanography maps the Baltic's chaos. Sudden gales, rogue waves that dwarfed longships. Eirik didn't know of currents or pressure systems, just the terror of waves taller than his mast, the weight of his crew's lives on his salt-cracked hands. Travel wasn't just survival, it was the pulse of Viking culture. Raids, born of hunger, bred warriors. Trade, born of scarcity, built markets like Birka and Hedeby. But the cost was steep. Graves from Kopang show young men, bones notched by swords, their runestones mute. Eirik's raid fed his family, but the blood on his axe woke him nightly. Saxon faces in his dreams. The Anglo-Saxon chronicle curses Viking fleets, but behind each was a man like Eirik, driven by a land that gave nothing free. Trade voyages linked the Norse to Byzantium, their amber-fetching silk, but the saga of Ingvar the far-traveled mourns men lost to river rapids. Eirik's friend, Kettle, traded walrus ivory in Novgorod but fell to a Russ arrow, his loot stolen. Exploration, like Leif Erikson's Vinland, sparked legends, but most settlers starved, per the Grenlandinga saga. Eirik dreamed of new lands, but Astrid's fear kept him closer. Home was harsh, but known. As we float through this stormy sea, picture Eirik at the helm, waves crashing like thunder, Harold's betrayal a fresh wound, Leif's young eyes wide with fear. He's not just a sailor, he's a gambler, every oar stroke a desperate bet, every horizon a fragile hope. The Norse voyage was a crucible, forging Vikings through peril, loss, and the sea's cold hunger. Drop a comment if you'd sail a longship with no map and a crew plotting mutiny. Drop another if you'd trek a bog with bandits on your tail. This was the cost of Norse travel, a life risked for silver, survival, or a name that might not outlast the tide. If you think that's harrowing, brace yourself, because the Viking social order was its own savage, blood-soaked beast. If surviving the Norse world's ice and storms was a brutal test, living within its social order was like navigating a wolf pack where every snarl hit a blade. Viking society wasn't a free-for-all of bearded warriors. It was a rigid hierarchy of jarls, carls, and thralls, where your place was carved in blood, honor, and cold hard silver. At the top, chieftains ruled with iron fists. In the middle, free farmers like Eirik clawed for respect. At the bottom, slaves toiled under the lash. Every step up the ladder came with feuds, oaths, and the constant threat of a knife in the back. Welcome to the savage world of Viking hierarchy, where power was a prize won through strength and lost through shame. Close your eyes, let the clink of mead horns lull you, and let's dive into the brutal order that bound the Norse. Picture a smoky feasting hall in Denmark, 930 CE, its timber walls hung with shields and furs. Eirik, now 42, his hands scarred from axe and plow, sits at a long table, gripping a horn of sour mead. The local jarl, Sigtrygg, a hulking chieftain with a braided beard and silver arm rings, looms at the high seat, his laughter booming over the skald's chant. Freemen, carls like Eirik, fill the benches, their voices a mix of boasts and grumbles, while thralls, collared and silent, pour ale, their eyes downcast. Eirik's here to swear loyalty for protection against raiders, but his gut twists. Sigtrygg's favor comes with taxes, and his son, Leif, 17, whispers that the jarl's men torched a rival's farm last week. Astrid, back home, begged Eirik to stay neutral, but neutrality's a death wish in this world. This isn't a cozy village council. It's a power game where loyalty's a chain and defiance a noose. Talk about a social scene that'd make your office politics look like a picnic with Freya. The Viking hierarchy was a pyramid of power, sharper than any blade. Jarls, the elite chieftains, owned vast lands, ships, and men, their wealth measured in silver hoards and blood oaths. The saga of the Orkneyingers paints jarls like Sigtrygg as near kings, their halls stuffed with loot from raids. Carls, free farmers and craftsmen like Eirik, with a backbone, owning small plots or forges but owing taxes and service to jarls. Thralls, slaves captured in raids or born to servitude, were property, their lives cheap. The Riksthula poem outlines this order. Jarls born to rule, carls to toil, thralls to suffer. Eirik straddled the carl's life, proud but precarious, his farm barely feeding his family after Sigtrygg's tithe. One feast, Sigtrygg demanded Eirik's best ram as gift. Eirik complied, But Astrid's glare burned hotter than the hearth. Hunger loomed. It's like living in a corporate ladder where the CEO's a warlord, and your bonus is not getting your house burned. Climbing the hierarchy was a brutal grind. Carls could rise through wealth or valor, but it meant outshining rivals without drawing a Jarl's wrath. Eirik's neighbor, Thorvald, a Carl with a knack for trading, gifted Sigtrig a walrus tusk cup, earning a ship's command. But Thorvald's boast at a feast, claiming he'd outraid Sigtrig, ended with his hall burned, his family fled. Eirik watched, silent, learning. Ambition needs a leash. Jarls stayed atop by crushing threats. The saga of Harald Hardrada tells of chieftains executing carls for disloyalty, a word as flexible as a reed. Sigtrig once beheaded a carl for refusing a raid, his blood staining the Thingstead stones. Eirik swore his oath, but his hand shook. Loyalty was a trap. It's like chasing a promotion where your boss might axe you for shining too bright. Here's a shocker to keep you hooked. Thralls could rise, but the cost was grim. A thrall, Skjaf, saved Sigtrig's life in a raid, earning freedom. But Carls shunned him. His collars mark a lifelong brand. The Gragas law allowed manumission, but freed thralls rarely owned land, scraping by as laborers. Skjaf built a shack, but Thorvald's sons torched it, claiming slaves don't belong. Eirik gave Skjaf wool, but avoided his eyes. Shame clung like damp. Graves from Birka show thralls buried with collars, some with broken skulls. Freedom was rare, acceptance rarer. Drop a comment if you'd climb from slavery in a world that never forgets your chains. The social toll was crushing. Carls like Eirik lived for honor, but it was a tightrope. Refusing a Jarl's call meant shame. Obeying risked death. Eirik joined Sigtrig's raid, returning with silver but a slashed arm. Astrid stitched it, her silence louder than any skald song. Honor didn't fill bowls. Jarls faced paranoia. Sigtrig slept with guards, fearing coups. His brother, Halfdan, vanished after a hunt. Accident or ambition? Thralls bore the worst. Whipped, starved, or worse. A thrall girl, Thora, spilled mead. Sigtrig broke her arm. Eirik looked away, guilt gnawing. The Landnámabók lists thralls dead in raids, nameless. It's like a society where your worth's your rank, and the bottom's a grave. Let's drift deeper. Vikings swore oaths to bind this order, but oaths broke under greed. Eirik pledged to Sigtrig, but when taxes doubled, he hid grain, risking flogging. The Havamel urges loyalty, but sagas brim with betrayal. Egil Skallagrimson killed his Jarl's kin over a slight. Runestones praise true men, but many, like the Hillerstjo stone, mourn lords slain by oathbreakers. Eirik's friend, Bjorn, swore to a rival Jarl, splitting the village. Eirik shunned him, but Bjorn's mead horn, left at his door, begged forgiveness. Eirik burned it, heart heavy. As we float through this feasting hall, picture Eirik, mead horn trembling, Sigtrig's eyes like a hawk's, Leif's whisper sharp with doubt. He's not just a farmer. He's a pawn, every oath a shackle, every rank a razor. The Viking hierarchy was a crucible, forging men through power and pain. Drop a comment if you'd swear loyalty to a guy who might burn your farm. This was the cost of Norse order, a life chained by rank. If that's savage, hold tight, because feuds were the blood that fueled it. The Viking hierarchy was a brutal cage, but the feuds that raged within it turned Norse society into a furnace of blood and vengeance. Forget the Hollywood image of Vikings united in mead-soaked brotherhood. Every village, clan, and longhouse simmered with grudges that could erupt over a stolen cow, a sharp word, or a glance held too long. Feuds weren't just squabbles. They were generational wars, fueled by honor, pride, and a legal system that practically cheered for revenge. A Viking's life was tethered to his kin, but that bond could drag you into a cycle of killing as relentless as the tides. Welcome to the blood feud furnace, where a slight could cost your head and peace was a pipe dream. Let's drift into this fiery saga, lulled by the clash of steel and the wail of mourners. Picture a windswept Thingstead in Norway, 935 CE, a stone circle under a slate-gray sky. Eirik, 43, stands with his axe, his breath steaming in the chill, facing his neighbor, Thorvald, whose farm borders his. A crowd, carls, thralls, Astrid, Leif, watches, their murmurs sharp as the wind. Thorvald's cow trampled Eirik's barley, a loss that'll starve Eirik's family come winter. Thorvald laughs it off, calling Eirik soft as a thrall. Honor demands blood, and the grueling law allows a duel. Eirik's heart pounds, Thorvald's bigger, but Eirik's rage is hotter. Astrid grips Leif's arm, her eyes pleading for peace, but Leif, 18, clutches a dagger, ready to avenge his father. This isn't a bar fight, it's a legal bloodbath where losing means death and winning means a feud that'll haunt your kin. Talk about a neighbor dispute that'd make your HOA feud look like a tea party with Odin. Feuds were the Norse world's heartbeat, pulsing through every clan. The Njal saga is a litany of grudges, over land, brides, or insults, that left halls burning and graves full. Honor was a Viking's currency, sharper than silver, and a slight, like Thorvald's taunt, was theft. The Havamol urges vengeance to restore face, and law backed it. Insults carried fines, but blood was often cheaper. Eirik demanded Wergild, a blood price, but Thorvald spat, offering a half-starved goat. Eirik's duel was his right, but victory came with a catch. Thorvald's brother, Gudmund, swore revenge, his axe gleaming at the Thingsted's edge. Eirik won, gashing Thorvald's arm, but the feud ignited. Gudmund burned Eirik's shed, killing a sheep. Astrid wept, but Eirik sharpened his blade. It's like a family feud where the game shows a slaughter, and the prize is your name's survival. The cycle was relentless. Feuds spanned generations, each killing birthing new grudges. The saga of the Burnt Njal tells of a feud lasting decades. Entire clans wiped out. Eirik's father killed a man over a stolen horse. His kin torched Eirik's childhood home, scarring his sister. Eirik settled it with Wergild, but the bad blood lingered. Thorvald's taunt echoed that old slight. One night, Gudmund's son slashed Leif's horse, a warning. Leif wanted blood, but Eirik paid silver, his jaw tight. Peace was fragile. Archaeological sites like Trelleborg show graves with weapon wounds. Skulls cleaved, ribs hacked. A Burka skeleton, a woman, bears a sword scar. Proof feud spared no one. It's like a vendetta where your great-grandkids are still paying for your trash talk. Here's a shocker. Feuds were legal, even celebrated. The Gragas law set Wergild rates, 200 ounces of silver for a carl, less for a thrall, but duels or raids were valid if payment failed. Thingsteads, like Iceland's Alting, judged disputes, but blood often settled faster. Eirik's duel drew cheers, the skald crafting a verse of his honor. But Gudmund's arson was just, per law, retaliation had rules. A Jarl, Sigtryg, mediated once, demanding peace, but took a cut of the Wergild, his smile sharp. The saga of Gisli shows feuds outlasting mediators. Halls burned despite rulings. Eirik's cousin, Olaf, killed a man for stealing fish. The Thingstead fined him, but the man's son stabbed Olaf's dog, restarting the cycle. Drop a comment if you duel over a cow and call it justice. The toll was devastating. Feuds drained wealth. Wergild or burned farms cost years of toil. Eirik silver to Gudmund left Astrid rationing porridge. Leif's boots worn thin. Families fractured. Astrid's brother shunned Eirik for weakness in paying, splitting kin. Women wove shrouds. Leif's friend, Bjorn, fell in a feud, his mother's wail haunting the fjord. The Laxdala saga mourns women widowed by grudges. Their looms silent. Children inherited hate. Leif's eyes hardened, his dagger ready. Graves show young men, bones notched by axes. Their runestones begging Valhalla. Eirik's village lost a third of its men to feuds 1 year. The skald's song's bitter. It's like a soap opera where every episode ends in a funeral, and your kids write the next one. Let's drift deeper. Viking saw feuds as duty. Thor demanded strength, Odin cunning. Eirik offered mead to Thor before his duel, but the gods didn't stop Gudmund's torch. The seer, Frida, blessed feuds for honor, her hands stained with sacrificial blood. Eirik ignored her, but her curse, barren fields, chilled him. Runestones, like the Simra stone, praise men fallen in vengeance, their glory eternal. But Eirik's glory was ash, his shed, his peace, gone. It's like a religion where your gods cheer for your grudge match. As we float through this Thingstead, picture Eirik, axe bloodied, Astrid's plea a whisper, Leif's dagger gleaming, Gudmund's vow a shadow. He's not just a farmer, he's a vendettist, every slight a spark, every truce a gamble. The feud was a furnace, forging Vikings through blood and loss. Drop a comment if you'd let a cow's trespass end in a graveyard. This was the cost of Norse honor, a life fueled by vengeance. If that's fiery, brace yourself, because justice was its own twisted blade. Feud set the Norse world ablaze, but the Viking sense of justice was the twisted blade that cut through the chaos, or deepened the wounds. This wasn't a world of fair trials and balanced scales. Justice was a brutal dance of wergild, duels, and thingsteads, where honor trumped mercy and a man's worth was measured in silver or blood. Laws like the Gragas tried to tame the violence, but they often fanned the flames, turning disputes into spectacles of vengeance or exile. For every Viking, from Jarl to Thrall, justice was a double-edged sword. Seek it, and you might lose your head. Dodge it, and you'd lose your name. Welcome to the savage world of Viking justice, where the law was as harsh as the land and fairness a fleeting dream. Let's drift into this grim saga, lulled by the thud of axes and the murmur of the Thing. Picture a rocky Thingstead in Iceland, 940 CE, a circle of stones under a sky heavy with rain. Eirik, 45, his beard graying, stands before a crowd of carls, thralls, and the Jarl Sigtrygg, whose silver arm rings glint like ice. Eirik's accused of stealing Olaf's fish, a lie, but Olaf, his old rival, claims a thrall saw Eirik near his nets. The Gragas demands proof or wergild, but Olaf wants a home gang, a duel to settle it. Eirik's axe is ready, but his hands shake. Olaf's younger, stronger, and Sigtrygg's smirk hints he's backed Olaf's claim. Astrid watches, her face pale, Leif's hand on his dagger, ready to jump in. The crowd chants, thirsty for blood, while the seer, Frida, mutters of Odin's judgment. This isn't a courtroom, it's a stage where justice is a blood sport and the loser's name is dust. Talk about a legal system that'd make your parking ticket dispute feel like a hug from Freyr. Viking justice was a tangle of law and vengeance, rooted in honor but sprouting chaos. The Thing, a communal assembly, judged disputes, from theft to murder. The Gulathing law set fines, 200 ounces of silver for a carl's life, 50 for a thrall, but proof was shaky, often just oaths or witnesses. Eirik swore innocence, but Olaf's thrall, coerced, backed the lie. Homegang was Eirik's right, a duel on a cloak-staked island, winner taking all. He gashed Olaf's leg, winning, but Olaf's kin vowed revenge. The Thingstead's justice, a spark for feud. The saga of the burnt jowl shows things failing. Killers fined, then slain anyway. Eirik paid wergild to Olaf's brother, but his barn burned weeks later. It's like a court where the judge is your enemy, and the verdict's a coin toss between cash or carnage. Exile was another blade. The Gragas banished killers for 3 years, stripping name and land. Eirik's cousin, Bjorn, killed a man over a bride. Exiled, he sailed to Greenland, but his ship sank, his saga drowned. The saga of Grettir follows an outlaw, hunted like a wolf. Eirik's neighbor, Gudmund, faced exile for theft. He fled, leaving his kids to starve. Astrid fed them, but the village shunned her. Justice punished kin too. Graves show outlaws buried face down, denied Valhalla. Eirik feared exile. Olaf's lie could have cost his farm. It's like a sentence where you're not just jailed, you're erased. Your family left to beg. Here's a shocker. Justice favored the powerful. Jarls like Sigtrygg twisted things. They're silver buying oaths. The saga of Harald Hardrada tells of chieftains dodging wergild, their men intimidating witnesses. Sigtrygg backed Olaf's claim, hoping to seize Eirik's land. Eirik's victory embarrassed him. Sigtrygg tripled his taxes, legal but cruel. Thralls got no justice. Skjaf, a freed thrall, was beaten for stealing bread. The Thing dismissed it, his collar's mark damning him. Runestones praise just Jarls, but digs at Burka show thrall graves, some with shattered bones. Drop a comment if you'd trust a court where your boss picks the jury. The toll was brutal. Justice drained wealth. Eirik's wergild left Leif shoeless, Astrid rationing fish. Feuds flared. Olaf's kin slashed Eirik's nets, costing a season's catch. Women bore scars. Leif's betrothed, Ingrid, lost her father to a duel, her dowry gone. The Laxdala saga mourns widows begging after husbands fell. Children learned hate. Leif carved Olaf's name in a rune, vowing blood. Thingsteads were theaters. Sigtrygg's duel drew skalds, their songs mocking losers. Eirik's victory won no peace. Villagers whispered he'd bribed a witness. It's like a trial where winning makes you a target, and losing makes you nothing. Let's drift deeper. Viking saw justice as divine. Odin judged souls, Thor blessed axes. Eirik offered a ram to Thor before his duel, but Frida's chant favored Olaf, her eyes greedy for Sigtrygg's silver. The Edda claims gods reward honor, but sagas show justice failing. Gisli Surson, outlawed, died betrayed. Runestones, like the Turin stone, beg Odin for fair judgment, but Eirik's faith wavered. Gods back the rich. Excavations show sacrificial pits. Men, horses, offered for justice. Eirik saw a thrall sacrificed, his blood soaking the thing's stead. He turned away, guilt heavy. As we float through this thing's stead, picture Eirik, axe bloodied, Astrid's fear a shadow, Leif's dagger ready, Sigtrygg's smirk a blade. He's not just a farmer. He's a defendant, every law a trap, every justice a wound. The Viking court was a crucible, forging men through blood and shame. Drop a comment if you'd duel for your name and call it fair. Drop another if you'd face a jarl's justice with no silver to spare. This was the cost of Norse law, a life sliced by honor's edge. If that's twisted, brace yourself, because the Viking daily grind was its own relentless beast. If the Viking social order was a furnace of blood and ambition, the daily grind of their work was a relentless anvil, hammering body and soul into submission. Forget the romantic image of Vikings as swaggering raiders. Most were farmers, smiths, or weavers, chained to a life of backbreaking labor just to scrape by. From dawn to dusk, they toiled in fields that fought back, forges that burned, and looms that never stopped, all under the shadow of hunger and a jarl's greedy tithe. Every axe swing, every thread spun, was a battle against a land that gave little and took everything. Welcome to the endless toil of Viking work, where hustle meant survival and rest was a luxury for the dead. Close your eyes, let the rhythmic thud of a plow lull you, and let's wade into the grind that defined Norse life. Picture a rocky field in Norway, 945 CE, the morning mist clinging to the fjord like a ghost. Eirik, now 47, his shoulders knotted from decades of toil, drives a wooden ard through stubborn soil, the blade catching on stones that bruise his hands. The barley field, his family's lifeline, is half-plowed, but rain looms, threatening to drown the seeds. Astrid, her back curved from years at the loom, scatters grain, her fingers cracked and bleeding, while Leif, 20, sharpens sickles nearby, his eyes weary from a night repairing nets. The Jarl, Sigtrygg, demands a third of the harvest as tax, leaving Eirik's family teetering on hunger's edge. A cow lows in the pen, its milk thin. Sigrid, Eirik's toddler daughter, needs it, but so does the market. This isn't a quaint farmstead from a Viking reenactment. It's a relentless grind that'd make your 9 to 5 look like a nap in Valhalla. Talk about a workday where grind isn't a metaphor. It's your life's pulse. Viking work was a brutal marathon, not a sprint. Most Norsemen were carls, free farmers like Eirik, tied to small plots that barely fed a family. The Gulathing law lists crops, barley, oats, rye, as life's core, but Norway's rocky soil and Iceland's ash yielded scant harvests. Eirik plowed from dawn, his ard splintering on granite, each furrow a prayer against frost. Harvests were hand-reaped, sickles dulling on tough stalks. The annals of Ulster note famines when crops failed, and graves from Hedeby show malnutrition, bones thin, teeth worn to stubs by gritty bread. One summer, Eirik's barley mildewed. He bartered his best cloak for a sack of oats, shivering through winter to keep Sigrid's belly full. Astrid boiled nettles, their sting a bitter reminder of scarcity. It's like farming on a cliff, where one bad season sends you plummeting. Beyond fields, work was diverse but no less grueling. Astrid wove wool into wadmal, a coarse cloth traded for silver. Her loom clacked endlessly, her spine aching, fingers raw from spinning. The Laxdæla saga praises women's cloth, but graves show weavers dead by 30, hands arthritic. Leif fished, hauling nets in icy fjords, his hands chapped, salt eating his skin. One net tore, losing a day's catch. Eirik traded a ram to mend it, their meat gone. Smiths like Eirik's friend, Kettle, forged axes in choking forges, their lungs scarred by smoke. Kettle's hammer fell one day, his arm burned. He worked on, but infection took his hand. Digs at Birka show smiths' graves with charred bones. It's like a gig economy where your side hustles your survival, and the pay's a loaf of bread. Here's a shocker to keep you hooked. Work was taxed to the breaking point. Jarls like Sigtrygg took a third of crops, fish, or cloth, per saga of the Orkneyingers. Eirik's tithe left his grain sack half empty. Astrid rationed porridge, her eyes hollow. Refusing meant exile or worse. Sigtrygg burned a Karl's farm for short tribute. The Gragas allowed tax disputes, but Thingsteads favored Jarls. Eirik paid, but hit a fish barrel, risking flogging. Runestones praise generous Jarls, but digs show hordes. Silver stolen from men like Eirik. Drop a comment if you'd farm for a boss who takes your lunch and calls it loyalty. The toll was merciless. Work broke bodies. Eirik's knees creaked. His hands gnarled like oak. Astrid's loom gave her migraines. She chewed willow bark, but the pain lingered. Leif's fishing left scars. His fingers stiff. Graves from Ribe show farmers with worn spines. Fishers with crushed hands. Work stole time. Eirik missed Sigurd's first steps, plowing till dusk. Astrid's songs for Leif faded, her voice hoarse from chanting to keep awake. The Edda lauds labor, but sagas mourn early deaths. Ketil's wife died weaving, her heart failing. Eirik's neighbor, Gudmund, collapsed sewing. His kids were sold as thralls. It's like a job where overtime's your life, and the 401k is a cairn. Let's drift deeper. Vikings prayed to Freyr for crops, Thor for strength, but work mocked their gods. Eirik offered a pig to Freyr, but frost killed his rye. The seer, Frida, demanded a cow for bounty. Eirik refused, and Frida cursed his plow. The next field failed. Was it her or the soil? Runestones, like the Colby stone, plead for divine aid, but Eirik's faith frayed. Soil studies show Scandinavia's poor yields. Granite, ash, no match for labor. Eirik knew only sweat, his hands proof of a land that demanded all. As we float through this field, picture Eirik, Ard trembling, Astrid's hands bleeding, Leif's eyes dull, Sigurd's cry faint. He's not just a farmer, he's a twaller, every furrow a fight, every harvest a fleeting win. Work was a crucible, forging Vikings through sweat and sacrifice. Drop a comment if you'd plow a rock field for a Jarl's tithe. Drop another if you'd weave till your fingers snap. This was the cost of Norse labor, a life ground to dust. If that's grueling, brace yourself, because raiding was bloodier still. The toil of Viking work was a relentless grind, but the raids that defined their legend were a blood-soaked gamble where glory came at the cost of lives, limbs, and sanity. Forget the cinematic image of Vikings storming shores in epic battles. Raids were desperate, chaotic scrambles for loot to survive lean winters, driven by hunger and a Jarl's greed. From longships slicing through fog to villages burning under Saxon screams, every raid was a dance with death, where a stray arrow or a betrayed oath could end you. For every tale of silver, there were scars, widows, and nightmares that no skald's song could soothe. Welcome to the bloody cost of Viking raids, where adventure was a euphemism for slaughter and survival. Let's sail into this grim saga, lulled by the creak of longships and the cry of gulls. Picture a fog-shrouded coast in England, 950 CE, the dawn sea gray as a wolf's pelt. Eirik, 50, his joints aching from years of plow and axe, grips an or on a longship, its dragon prow cutting the waves. Jarl Sigtrygg leads the raid, his silver arm rings glinting, promising loot from a Saxon monastery. The crew, 30 men, including Leif, 22, his first raid, row in silence, their breath steaming. Eirik's heart hammers, Astrid's plea, come back whole, echoes, but hunger drove him here, last winter's famine still raw. The shore looms, huts, a church, no guards. Sigtrygg signals, and they charge, axes flashing. Screams erupt, blood sprays, and Leif freezes, his sword trembling. Eirik kills a monk, his face haunting him, but grabs a silver cross. This isn't a Viking blockbuster. It's a massacre for survival that'd make your heist movie look like a bake sale with Thor. Talk about a job where team building means burning a village and praying you don't die. Raids were Viking life's dark pulse, born of necessity. The Anglo-Saxon chronicle laments raids like Lindisfarne's in 793, monasteries gutted for gold. Famine winters pushed carls like Eirik to sail. Sigtrygg demanded tribute, leaving Eirik's grain sack empty. Longships, swift and shallow, hit coasts from Ireland to Byzantium, for the saga of the Jomsvikings. Eirik's raid was quick, torch huts, grab loot, flee, but chaos ruled. A Saxon spear grazed Leif's arm. Eirik dragged him to the ship, blood soaking his cloak. 5 men fell, their bodies left for crows. Digs at Repton show Viking graves. Young men, skulls split. Eirik's friend, Bjorn, died in a raid. His wife begging for his bones. It's like a smash and grab where the alarm's a sword, and the getaway car's a leaky boat. The stakes were brutal. Raids promised silver but delivered death. The saga of Olaf Tryggvason tells of crews slaughtered by ambushes. Sigtrygg's raid hit a trap. Saxons rallied, their pitchforks deadly. Eirik fought, his axe heavy, taking a gash to his thigh. Leif killed, his eyes blank, a boy no more. They escaped with half the loot, Sigtrygg claiming most. Runestones, like the Vastrastro stone, mourn raiders fallen in the west, their silver lost. Eirik's share, a candlestick, fed Sigrid for a month, but the scar throbbed. It's like robbing a bank with the vaults guarded by a mob, and your cut's a pittance. Here's a shocker. Betrayal was raid's shadow. Crews swore oaths, but loot broke them. The saga of Grettir tells of raiders killing for shares. Leif's friend, Thorstein, stole a gold ring. Sigtrygg cut his hand, the stump a warning. Eirik caught Harald, his old cousin, hiding a chalice. He spared him, but Harald's glare promised revenge. Digs show Viking camps, like Torksey, with weapon scars, hinting at internal fights. Drop a comment if you'd raid with a crew eyeing your loot like it's theirs. The toll was soul-crushing. Raiders returned scarred or broken. Eirik's thigh wound festered. Astrid's herb saved him, but he limped. Leif's nightmares woke the Longhouse. Saxon faces in his dreams. The Edda glorifies battle, but sagas mourn. Rolf Kroki's men died for gold, their kin destitute. Astrid wove shrouds for fallen raiders. Her loom a dirge. Graves show raiders with hacked bones, some clutching Thor's hammers. Eirik's village lost a third of its men one summer. Skald songs bitter. It's like a job where success means trauma, and failure means a shallow grave. Let's drift deeper. Vikings prayed to Odin for victory, Thor for strength, but raids mocked their gods. Eirik offered a ram to Odin, but the Saxon trap came anyway. Frida blessed the raid, her hands bloody, but took silver for luck. Runestones, like the Gripsholm stone, honor raiders, but Eirik's faith cracked. Gods didn't stop spears. It's like a war where your chaplain's on the take, and your saints are silent. As we float through this burning shore, picture Eirik, axe bloodied, Leif's eyes haunted, Astrid's plea a ghost, Sigtrygg's greed a chain. He's not just a raider, he's a survivor, every swing a gamble, every loot a curse. Raiding was a crucible, forging Vikings through blood and guilt. Drop a comment if you'd raid for a Jarl and call it glory. Drop another if you'd sleep after killing for a cross. This was the cost of Norse raids, a soul stain for silver. If that's bloody, brace yourself, because the Viking body broke under worse. Raids soaked the Viking world in blood, but the Norse body itself was a fragile vessel, battered by a life of toil, war, and a land that offered no mercy. Vikings weren't the invincible warriors of legend. Their flesh broke under hunger, cold, and disease, their bones scarred by labor and blades. From starvation's gnaw to wounds that festered, from teeth ground to dust by gritty bread to fevers that burned through longhouses, every Viking fought a war within. Medicine was a mix of herbs and hope, more spell than science, and even the strongest fell to ailments we'd shrug off today. Welcome to the frail body under Norse strain, where survival was a miracle and death a constant shadow. Let's drift into this aching saga, lulled by the crackle of a hearth and the cough of the sick. Picture a longhouse in Iceland, 955 CE. Its turf walls damp under a sleeting sky. Eirik, 53, lies on a fur-draped bench, his breath ragged, a fever burning through his weathered frame. His thigh scar, from a raid, throbs, the wound reopened plowing. Astrid, her hands trembling, grinds nettle and yarrow into a poultice, her face gaunt from rationing food for Sigrid, 5, who coughs in the corner. Leif, 25, stokes the fire, his own arm scarred from a fishing mishap, his eyes hollow from sleepless nights. The family's grain is gone, the fjord's fish scarce, and Sigtrygg's tithe took their last ram. A seer, Frida, chants to Freya, but her herbs smell of mold, and Eirik's fever climbs. This isn't a Viking warrior shrugging off wounds, it's a family crumbling under a body's betrayal, where a cold could kill faster than an axe. Talk about a health plan that'd make your flu shot feel like a potion from Valhalla. Starvation was the Norse body's constant foe. Winters slashed harvests, and Jarl's taxes gutted stores. The annals of Ulster note famines killing thousands, and graves from Birka show bones thinned by hunger. Eirik's family ate porridge thinned with water, their ribs sharp. Sigurd's legs bowed, rickets setting in. Viking diets lacked vitamins. Per skeletal studies. One winter, Eirik traded his axe for a sack of barley. Astrid boiled bones, but Leif's strength faded, his nets empty. The saga of the Greenlanders tells of men eating boots. Eirik chewed leather once, his stomach twisting. It's like living on a diet of air and grit, where your kid's hunger is louder than any storm. Injuries were a daily tax. Plowing broke Eirik's hands. Graves show farmers with arthritic spines. Leif's fishing left rope burns, one festering till Astrid lanced it, his scream waking Sigrid. Raid scarred worse. Eirik's thigh wound never healed right, limping his gait. The saga of Egil describes warriors dying from cuts gone septic. Bjorn, Eirik's friend, lost a leg in a raid. He bled out, his wife's wail a village lament. Digs at Repton show hacked bones, ribs, skulls, some half-healed, proof of lives cut short. Astrid fell weaving, her wrist snapping. She bound it, working on, but it ached years later. It's like a job where every shift risks a limb, and your sick leaves a prayer. Disease was a silent reaper. Smallpox scarred villages. Graves from Uppsala show pitted skulls. Eirik's fever might have been typhus, spread by lice in cramped longhouses. Sigrid's cough hinted at tuberculosis, per Gesta Danorum accounts. Malaria hit coastal areas. Mosquitoes breeding in bogs. Leif's friend, Torstein, burned with fever, dying in days. His mother buried him, her hands raw from digging. Viking graves show plague pits, bodies tangled. Astrid's sister died of childbirth fever, her baby too. Eirik carved a rune, but the village forgot her. It's like a world where every sneeze is a death knell, and your doctor's a chant. Here's a shocker. Medicine was more magic than cure. Healers like Frida used herbs, yarrow, willow, but mixed them with spells. The Edda mentions charms for wounds, but sepsis laughed. Eirik's poultice eased pain, but infection spread. Frida's chant to Freya did nothing. Amputations, done with axes, killed more than saved. Graves show botched stumps. The saga of Ragnar Lodbrok tells of warriors dying from cursed wounds. Astrid boiled water, a rare insight, but Leif's arm scar festered till she burned it shut, his scream a scar on her heart. Runestones beg Freya for healing, but digs show early deaths. 30 was old. Drop a comment if you'd trust a seer with your fever. The toll was brutal. Hunger weakened Eirik's heart. Mummies show Vikings with clogged arteries. Astrid's teeth crumbled, Sandy bred the culprit. Graves from Gotland show jaws like ruins. Leif scars stiffened his arm, fishing harder. Sigrid's rickets slowed her. Astrid wept, blaming herself. The Laxdala saga mourns early deaths. Women from childbirth, men from wounds. Eirik's neighbor, Gudmund, died of a cough, leaving kids to starve. Psychological strain was worse. Eirik's fever dreams saw hell, his faith cracking. Leif drank mead to sleep, his raid kills haunting him. It's like a life where your body's a traitor, and your mind's its accomplice. Let's drift deeper. Vikings leaned on gods, Freya for healing, Thor for endurance, but bodies broke anyway. Eirik offered a hen to Freya, but his fever roared. Frida demanded a goat. Eirik refused, her curse chilling him. Runestones, like the Colby stone, plead for health, but Eirik's hope was ash. Modern studies show Viking diets, fish, barley, lacked nutrients, bones brittle. Eirik knew only pain, his scars a map of a life that gave no quarter. As we float through this fevered longhouse, picture Eirik, breath shallow, Astrid's hand shaking, Leif scars tight, Sigrid's cough a dirge. He's not just a farmer, he's a fighter, every pulse a battle, every breath a win. The Norse body was a crucible, forged through pain and loss. Drop a comment if you'd live with hunger and call it life. Drop another if you'd fight a fever with a spell. This was the cost of Norse survival, a body broken by strain. If that's frail, brace yourself, because the Viking soul faced its own dark void. If the Viking grind broke their bodies, their beliefs were a storm that battered their souls, binding them to gods as fierce and fickle as the seas they sailed. The Norse didn't kneel to a loving deity, they faced a pantheon of Odin, Thor, Freya, and Loki. whose whims could bless a harvest or burn a longship to ash. Every axe swing, every voyage, every breath was steeped in rituals to appease these divine tyrants. But their silence left Vikings like Eirik trembling in the dark, haunted by omens and the dread of a god's wrath. From blood-soaked sacrifices to runes carved in fear, their faith was less comfort and more a chain, pulling them into a cosmic gamble. Welcome to the haunting world of Norse gods, where belief was a blade pressed to your throat. Close your eyes, let the chant of a seer lull you, and let's plunge into the divine terror that ruled Viking hearts. Picture a windswept hill in Norway, 960 CE, the twilight sky streaked with blood-red clouds. Eirik, 55, his hands gnarled from plow and axe, stands before a wooden idol of Thor, its hammer carved deep, eyes hollow under a crude helm. A goat bleats, its throat soon to be slit by the seer. Frida, her robe stained with old blood, her voice a hiss as she invokes Thor's might for a safe raid. The village, Astrid, Leif, Sigrid, Carls, and thralls, watches, their breath steaming in the chill. Eirik's heart races. Last year's offering failed, a storm drowning his brother's ship. Sigtrygg, the Jarl, looms nearby, his silver arm rings glinting, demanding a bigger sacrifice. A horse, maybe a thrall, to win Odin's favor. The air crackles with fear, a raven caws, an omen of Odin's gaze, and Eirik grips his Thor's hammer pendant, praying it's enough. This isn't a church service. It's a desperate deal with a god who'd make your Sunday prayers feel like a cozy chat with Freya. Talk about a faith where trust in the divine means hope the gods don't smite you for fun. The Norse gods were no gentle shepherds. Odin, the All-Father, was a cunning wanderer, trading wisdom for blood, his ravens spying on men. Thor, the Thunderer, smashed giants but crushed ships with storms. Freya, goddess of love, claimed half the slain, her beauty a lure to death. Loki, the trickster, sowed chaos, laughing at mortal pain. The poetic Edda paints them as cosmic forces, not friends. Odin hung on Yggdrasil, sacrificing himself to himself, a grim model for Vikings. Eirik revered Thor, his hammer a shield against Draugr, but feared Odin's eye, always watching. One raid, a raven circled Eirik's longship. He offered mead, but the storm came anyway. Leif's friend drowned. Astrid prayed to Freya for Sigrid's health, but her cough lingered. It's like worshipping a CEO who might fire you for a whim, and your HR's a raven with a grudge. Rituals were a Viking's lifeline, but they bled resources and hope. The saga of the Orkneyingers describes sacrifices. Goats, horses, even men, to sway gods. Eirik slit a pig's throat for Freyr's harvest, its blood soaking the earth, but frost killed half his barley. Frida demanded a cow for better luck. Eirik paid, but the next crop mildewed. Villages held blots, blood feasts, slaughtering livestock they couldn't spare. At Uppsala, per Gesta Danorum, 9 men hung for Odin every 9 years, their screams a plea for favor. Eirik saw a thrall sacrificed, his eyes wide. Frida called it divine, but Eirik's stomach turned. Runestones, like the rock stone, begged gods for aid, but Eirik's offerings felt like bribes to a silent mob boss. It's like throwing your savings into a slot machine run by a deity with a bad temper. Here's a shocker to keep you gripped. Omens ruled lives. Ravens, storms, or dreams were Odin's whispers. The saga of the Volsungs tells of men doomed by ill signs. Eirik woke from a dream of a wolf, Loki's kin, before a raid. He offered silver, but Leif's arm was gashed. Astrid saw a black cat, fearing hell. Sigrid fell ill, her cough a curse. Frida read runes, charging a ram for clarity. Eirik paid, but her words, beware the one-eyed, haunted him, Odin's shadow looming. Dig show amulets, Thor's hammers, Freya's falcons, clutched in graves, proof of fear. Drop a comment if you'd live by a raven's flight or a seer's scam. Yeah, thought so. The toll was soul deep. Belief bred paranoia. Eirik carved runes at every storm, fearing Thor's hammer. Astrid's prayers to Freya left her drained. Sigrid's fever her fault. Leif shunned a raid after a bad rune, earning Sigtrygg's scorn. The Njal saga shows men broken by divine silence. Gunnar died cursing gods. Eirik's faith cracked. He hit a Christian cross, hedging bets, but Frida's glare chilled him. Graves show mixed charms, pagan, Christian, hinting at doubt. It's like a religion where every prayer's a plea, and silence is judgment. Let's drift deeper. Vikings saw gods in every gust, every star. Eirik offered mead to Njord for winds, but storms roared. Frida's chants grew shrill, her power a leash. The prose Edda claims gods shape fate, but Eirik's fate was hunger, his hands raw from feudal rites. It's like a faith where your gods are landlords, and the rent's your blood. As we float through the sacrificial hill, picture Eirik, knife bloody, Astrid's eyes fearful, Leif's faith fraying, Frida's chant a chain. He's not just a farmer, he's a supplicant, every rite a gamble, every omen a weight. The Norse gods were a crucible, forging Vikings through dread and devotion. Drop a comment if you'd slit a goat for a god who might ignore you. This was the cost of Norse faith, a soul haunted by divine caprice. If that's chilling, brace yourself, because death's rituals were darker still. The Norse gods cast a haunting shadow, but the Viking approach to death was a plunge into an even darker abyss, where rituals turned grief into a spectacle of fire, blood, and fear. Death wasn't a quiet end, it was a passage to Valhalla, hell, or oblivion, demanding rites to ensure a soul's journey or doom it to wander as a draugr. From ship burials to human sacrifices, from pyres that lit the night to runes carved in desperate hope, Vikings faced death with a mix of defiance and dread, their rituals as brutal as their lives. Every Viking, from Jarl to thrall, knew their corpse would be a stage for a final, grim performance. Welcome to the grim Norse death rituals, where the grave was a gamble and eternity a flickering flame. Close your eyes, let the crackle of a pyre lull you, and let's wade into the rites that sent Vikings to the beyond. Picture a fjord's edge in Iceland, 965 CE, the dusk sky heavy with ash-gray clouds. Eirik, 60, frail from fever, watches a funeral pyre being built for his friend. Kettle, a smith killed by a raid's arrow. The pyre, stacked with birch and pine, holds Kettle's body, his hammer at his side, his face pale under a shroud. Astrid, her hands worn from weaving shrouds, lays a Thor's hammer amulet on Kettle's chest, her eyes wet. Leif, 27, stacks wood, his raid scars tight, while Sigrid, 10, clings to Astrid, fearing draugr tales. The seer, Frida, chants to Odin, her knife flashing as she slits a thrall's throat, his blood soaking the pyre for Valhalla's favor. Jarl Sigtrygg, silver-clad, demands a ship burial, but Kettle's kin can't afford it. The fire roars, smoke curling like a soul's flight, but Eirik shivers. Will his own death earn such rites, or will he wander, forgotten? This isn't a somber funeral. It's a Viking send-off that'd make your memorial service look like a potluck with Njord. Talk about a goodbye where rest in peace means burn bright or haunt the fjord. Death rituals were the Norse soul's bridge to the afterlife, but they were steeped in blood and fire. The saga of the Volsungs describes pyres, graves, and ship burials to honor the dead. Vikings believed souls went to Valhalla, Odin's hall for warriors, Folkvanger, Freya's field, or hell, a cold underworld for the rest. A botched rite risked a draugr, a walking corpse, per the Erbygja saga. Kettle's pyre was modest, but jarls like Sigtrygg demanded ships burned or buried, stuffed with loot. The Oseberg ship burial, circa 834 CE, held a noblewoman, her grave packed with sleds, beds, and slaves, killed to serve her. Eirik's village couldn't afford such grandeur. Astrid wove Kettle's shroud, her loom a dirge. Leif carved a rune for Kettle's soul, but Frida's thrall sacrifice sickened him. Blood didn't guarantee Valhalla. It's like planning your funeral with a budget of ash and a guest list of ghosts. The rites were brutal. Pyres needed wood, scarce in Iceland, costing Eirik's family a winter's fuel for Kettle. Sacrifices were common. The Gesta Danorum notes thralls or kin slain to join the dead. Frida killed a thrall boy, his scream cut short, but Eirik saw his mother's wail, silenced by Sigtrygg's glare. Ship burials bankrupted clans. Sigtrygg's father's ship, burned with horses, left his kin hungry. Graves show hacked bones, some with collars. Thralls killed for rights. Astrid feared her death. Would Leif afford a pyre, or would she rot, a draugr? Runestones, like the Turinge stone, mark graves. But many, like Kettle's, were unmarked, his name fading. It's like a funeral where the casket's your life savings, and the eulogy's a knife. Here's a shocker. Women faced grim rites. The saga of Ibn Fadlan describes a chieftain's burial with a slave girl drugged, raped, and strangled to join him. Astrid's sister Ingrid died in childbirth. Her pyre was small, a thrall's blood spared. but Frida's chant cursed her to hell for weakness. Excavations at Birka show female graves with weapons, some women warriors, but many with broken bones, hinting at sacrificial deaths. Sigrid, hearing Draugr tales, clung to Astrid, fearing her own grave. Drop a comment if you'd face a pyre knowing your soul might wander. The toll was crushing. Rites drained wealth. Ketil's pyre cost Eirik's firewood, leaving Sigrid shivering. Grief was public. Leif's tears at Ketil's fire earned Sigtryg's scorn, shaming him. Astrid's shroud-weaving stole sleep, her hands bleeding. The Njal saga mourns kin lost to rites. Women died serving dead jarls. Eirik's fever made him dread his grave. Would Leif afford a rune, or would he haunt as Draugr? Graves show hasty burials, bones unburned, souls at risk. It's like a funeral where your legacy's a fire you can't pay for, and your family pays in tears. Let's drift deeper. Vikings believed Odin chose the slain, but rites were man's work. Eirik offered a hen to Freya for Ketil's soul, but Frida's thrall blood felt wrong. Runestones begged Valhalla, but Eirik's faith wavered. Did gods care? The prose Edda promises afterlife, but Eirik saw only ash. It's like a faith where your heaven's a gamble, and the gods roll the dice. As we float through this pyre's smoke, picture Eirik, eyes stinging, Astrid's hands raw, Leif's heart heavy, Sigrid's fear a whisper. He's not just a farmer, he's a mourner, every rite a plea, every flame a fragile hope. Death rituals were a crucible, forging Vikings through grief and fire. Drop a comment if you'd burn your wealth for a pyre. This was the cost of Norse death, a soul sent to shadow. If that's grim, brace yourself, because legacy fears were the deepest cut. Norse death rituals sent souls into the void, but the Viking fear of being forgotten was a deeper, crippling wound that haunted every warrior, farmer, and weaver. Legacy wasn't just fame, it was existence, a name carved in runestones, skald songs, or kin's memory to ensure a soul's survival in the afterlife. Without it, you were dust, your spirit doomed to wander, erased by time or rivals. Vikings like Eirik poured their lives into deeds, raids, and runes, but the terror of oblivion clung like frost, fueled by a world where names faded as fast as pyre smoke. From chieftains hoarding glory to thralls craving a whisper of worth, every Viking fought to outlast their grave. Welcome to the crippling fear of Norse legacy, where eternity was a battle against erasure. Close your eyes, let the Skald's chant lull you, and let's unravel the dread that drove Viking souls. Picture a fire-lit longhouse in Denmark, 970 CE, the night air thick with mead and smoke. Eirik, 65, frail and fever-worn, sits by the hearth, his hands trembling as he carves a runestone for himself, etching his name, Eirik, son of Thorstein, into granite. Astrid, her eyes dim from years at the loom, weaves a tapestry of his raids, her fingers slow. Leif, 32, sharpens his axe, his raid scars a map of survival, while Sigrid, 15, listens to a skald sing of Sigtrygg's glory, her father's name absent. Eirik's heart sinks, his raids fed his kin, but no skald sings his deeds, and Sigtrygg's new hall overshadows his stone. A rival, Gudmund, defaced Eirik's father's rune, erasing his name. Will Leif let Eirik's fade? This isn't a cozy retirement, it's a Viking's final fight to be remembered, where legacy is a shield against oblivion that'd make your Instagram bio look like a saga carved in gold. Talk about a life where live forever means hope your name outlasts the rain. Legacy was a Viking's lifeline to eternity. The poetic Edda claims a name endures in skald songs or stones, feeding the soul in Valhalla or hell. A forgotten Viking was a Draugr, lost forever. Eirik craved a runestone, like the gelling stones, to shout his name, but stones cost silver, his raids barely fed Sigrid. Jarls like Sigtrygg built halls, their sagas chanted, but carls like Eirik scraped for a verse. The saga of Egil Skallagrimsson shows Egil bribing skalds for songs. Eirik had no coin, only deeds, raids, crops, Leif's life. Astrid's tapestry wove his Saxon raid, but moths ate it, her tears falling. Leif swore to carve Eirik's stone, but his raids left little time. Runestones, like the Glavendrup stone, praise great men, but Eirik's was small, his name shallow. It's like chasing a Wikipedia page in a world where vandals have chisels and time's a sandstorm. The fight for legacy was brutal. Raids were Eirik's bid for fame, but Sigtrygg claimed his loot's glory. The saga of Harald Hardrada tells of kings stealing Karl's tales. Eirik killed a Saxon, but Sigtryg's skald sang of the Jarl's victory. He carved his own rune, but Gudmund's sons mocked its size, threatening to topple it. Runestones were defaced. Excavations show scratched names, like the Hillersjo stone. Eirik's father's stone was chipped. He paid Wergild to stop worse, but his heart broke. Astrid wove Leif's birth into cloth, but Sigtrygg's wife sneered, calling it peasant thread. Sigrid dreamed of skalds singing her name, but thralls had no songs. Graves show them unmarked, bones dust. It's like posting your life's work online, knowing trolls can delete it, and your followers are too busy to care. Here's a shocker. Legacy could kill. The Njal saga shows men raiding for fame, dying for a skald's verse. Eirik's cousin, Bjorn, raided to earn a song. A Frankish arrow took his eye, his name unsung. Sigtrygg built a hall, bankrupting his kin, who cursed him. His saga, Per Orkneyinger's saga, ended in feud. Eirik's runestone cost his last ram. Sigrid went hungry, her cough worsening. Leif risked a raid for silver to carve Eirik's name, but a gash nearly killed him. Digs at Trelleborg show graves with tiny stones. Men who died for legacy, forgotten anyway. Drop a comment if you'd starve your kid for a song that might not last. Yeah, thought so. The toll was soul-crushing. Legacy fear stole Eirik's sleep. He dreamt of blank stones, his draugr wandering. Astrid's tapestry was her legacy, but moths and scorn unraveled it. She wept, hiding from Sigrid. Leif's raids for fame hardened him, his laughter gone. Astrid feared he'd die for a rune. Sigrid carved her name in wood, but Sigtrygg's thrall burned it for kindling. The Laxdæla saga mourns men lost to glory. Gudrun's sons died for fame, her heart broken. Eirik's village forgot Ketil's name, his pyre ash. Graves show erased runes, souls lost. It's like a life where your obituary's a gamble, and your kids might not read it. Let's drift deeper. Vikings believed skalds and stones fed souls, but gods judged worth. Eirik offered mead to Odin for a saga, but silence answered. Frida chanted for Eirik's name, her price a cow. He refused, her curse, no songs, chilling him. The prose Edda promises eternal fame, but Eirik saw only fading runes. Runestones, like the Simra stone, boast everlasting names, but sand wore them thin. Eirik's legacy was Leif's oath, but doubt gnawed. Would Leif carve deep? The fear shaped Viking culture. Skalds were kings. Egil's verse saved his life, per his saga. Eirik bribed a skald with a fish, earning a line, but Sigtrygg's gold drowned it. Raids, feuds, work, all fed legacy. Astrid's cloth, Leif's scars, Sigrid's dreams were their runes, but time was a thief. Digs show hoards buried for fame. Silver meant nothing in hell. Eirik's father's hoard was stolen, his name with it. It's like a world where your brand's your soul, and the market's a grave. As we float through this smoky longhouse, picture Eirik, chisel trembling, Astrid's loom silent, Leif's axe heavy, Sigrid's hope faint. He's not just a farmer, he's a dreamer, every rune a plea, every deed a fight against time. Legacy fear was a crucible, forging Vikings through dread and defiance. Drop a comment if you'd carve your name knowing rain might erase it. Drop another if you'd die for a skald's song. This was the cost of Norse eternity, a soul clawing for a whisper in the void. If that's crippling, brace yourself, because our final reflection will bind this brutal saga together. As the embers of a longhouse fire fade into the chill of a Norse night, we reach the end of our journey through the brutal saga of Viking life, a world where every breath was a battle, every dream a defiance against a land and gods that offered no mercy. From the icy grip of winters that froze bones to the blood-soaked raids that scarred souls, from the feuds that burned villages to the rituals that sent trembling spirits into the void, the Vikings lived on a knife's edge, their existence a testament to grit carved in frost and fire. Close your eyes, let the distant howl of a fjord wind lull you, and let's weave together this grim tapestry, finding gratitude in our softer world and a question to carry into your dreams. Picture Eirik one final time, standing on a windswept hill overlooking his fjord, his frame bent by decades of plow, axe, and fever. He's 65, his beard gray as ash, his hands etched with scars from fields, raids, and runes carved in desperate hope. Astrid sits by the hearth, her loom silent, her fingers too worn to weave the tapestry of their lives, her eyes tracing Sigrid, now 15, who hums a skald's song but fears her own name will fade. Leif, 32, sharpens his axe. His raid-hardened face a mask hiding nightmares of Saxon blood and drowned friends. Jarl Sigtrygg's hall looms across the valley, its fires mocking Eirik's small runestone, his name shallow, vulnerable to rain and rivals. Eirik's life has been a relentless grind, winters that starved, feuds that bled, gods that ignored his goats, and a legacy that might not outlast the snow. He's no hero of saga, no Jarl with a skald's chant, just a carl who fought to keep his kin alive, his name a whisper against oblivion. This was Viking life, not a horned helmet epic, but a saga of survival, where every day was a duel with death, and every night a plea for a tomorrow that might never come. Let's gather the threads of this Norse world, because it's a tale as haunting as it is raw. We began in the Longhouse, where Eirik faced winters that froze his beard, summers that mocked his plow, and storms that swallowed his kin, a climate that forged Vikings through hunger and frost. The homestead was no refuge. Turf walls leaked, fields fought back, and kin like Olaf turned axes on each other over a cow's trespass, making every meal a hard-won truce. Travel was a gamble, long ships splintering under waves, trails crawling with bandits, and crews like Harold betraying for a bale of furs, each voyage a toss of the dice with Njord's cruel hand. The social order was a furnace. Jarls like Sigtrygg ruled with silver and swords, feuds burned through clans, and justice at the Thingstead was a duel or a wergild that left Eirik's grain sack empty, honor a chain as heavy as hunger. Work ground bodies to dust, Eirik's hands bled, Astrid's loom stole her sight, Leif's net scarred his youth. While raids, the Viking legend, soaked Eirik's axe in blood, their silver barely feeding Sigrid but costing Leif sleep. Disease and injury broke them. Fevers burned, wounds festered, teeth crumbled. Frida's herbs failing where our pills would laugh. Their gods, Odin, Thor, Freya, demanded blood, their silence a whip. Death rituals burned pyres and thralls, yet Draugr fears lingered. Legacy was the deepest cut, Eirik's runestone, Astrid's cloth, Leif scars a cry against time, but sand and rivals threatened to erase them, their souls teetering on oblivion's edge. It's like living in a world where your LinkedIn profile is your afterlife pass, and the server's always crashing. Now, let's step back and breathe in our own world, because the contrast is a jolt sharper than Thor's hammer. Imagine Eirik in a modern supermarket, staring at shelves bursting with bread, fruit, and coffee. No frost to kill the crop, no Jarl to snatch a third. Our homes don't leak turf or choke with smoke. Our thermostats laugh at Norse winters. We travel by planes, not longships, with GPS, not ravens, and our co-workers don't usually axe us over a stolen lunch. Well, mostly. Our feuds are Twitter spats, not Thingstead duels, and our justice doesn't demand a wergild or a thrall's blood. Work might grind us, but our backs don't break plowing granite, and our side hustles don't end in Saxon spears. Medicine heals. Our fevers bow to antibiotics, not Frida's moldy yarrow. We don't slit goats for Odin or dread Draugr in the dark. Our gods, if we have them, don't demand pyres. Our legacy lives in posts, photos, or kids who'll remember us, not runes eroded by rain. We're not Jarls or Carls, but we're free. Free to sleep without fear of a rival's torch, to eat without rationing, to dream without a seer's curse. Drop a comment if you're grateful for a world where your toothbrush isn't a twig and your boss isn't swinging an axe. Yeah, thought so. This gratitude isn't just for comfort. It's for perspective. Vikings like Eirik, Astrid, Leif, and Sigrid endured a world where survival was a saga of defiance. Eirik plowed through frost, raided through blood, carved runes through doubt, his grit a fire that kept his kin alive. Astrid wove through pain, her cloth a legacy moths couldn't steal. Leif fought through scars, his axe a shield for Sigrid's future. Sigrid dreamed through fear, her songs a spark no Jarl could snuff. Their resilience humbles us. They faced starvation, betrayal, and God's silence, yet left us runestones, sagas, and a legacy that echoes across a millennium. Birka's graves, gelling stones, the Njal's saga, they're not just relics, they're cries of "we were here," etched against time's tide. It's like they built their pyramids not of stone but of will, daring us to remember their fight. But their saga holds warnings sharper than an axe. Their feuds, fueled by honor, burned clans. Our grudges could learn from their ash. Their raids, born of hunger, bled innocence. Our greed might reflect their desperation. Their gods demanded blood. Our beliefs could question such costs. Their legacy fears drove Eirik to carve deeper. But erased names like kettles teach us to value the living, not just the remembered. Their bodies broke under strain. Our health is a gift they'd raid for. The Vikings' world was a mirror, showing us what to cherish. Warmth, peace, a name that lives in love, not stone. It's like their lives whisper across the fjords, urging us to savor our fleeting moments before the tide sweeps us away. Let's linger on a final tale, a fitting close to this brutal saga. Eirik, old and fading, sits by his runestone, its letters shallow but his. Astrid, her hand still, tells Sigrid of their youth. Fields plowed, raid survived, love endured. Leif, axe at rest, swears to carve Eirik's name deeper, his voice thick. Sigrid sings a skald's verse, not of Jarl's but of Eirik's barley, Astrid's cloth, Leif's scars, a saga no Sigtrid can steal. Eirik dreams of a simpler life, a farmer by a fjord, his name unknown but his heart light, free of runes and raids. He wakes, axe heavy, and faces the dawn, his legacy not in stone but in Sigrid's song, Leif's oath, Astrid's touch. He's a Viking, but he's human, longing for a world where survival's enough, not a fight for eternity's echo. It's like a warrior wishing for a life where his mark is a smile, not a rune, his saga a family, not a skald's chant. This tale binds the Viking paradox. Fierce yet frail, epic yet ephemeral. Eirik's world was a crucible, forging glory through pain, love through loss. We've walked their fjords, tasted their hunger, felt their fevered fears. Now, as we drift toward sleep, let's carry their lesson. Live for the moment, bread shared, a laugh unbroken, a name whispered in love, not carved in stone. Their lives were a warning, a wonder, a wail from the past, urging us to embrace our fragility, our freedom, our fleeting fire under the stars. So, here's a question to carry into your dreams. If you were a Viking, would you chase the skald's song, the raids, the runes, the name that might live forever? Or would you flee the longship, craving a life where your legacy's a quiet fjord, a child's smile, a hand held tight, free of eternity's weight? Drop a comment with your choice. Let it linger as you drift off, dreaming of a world where you're not a warrior, but gloriously, gratefully human. The fjords fade, the runestones crumble, and the Vikings' whispers soften, but your answer, your saga, lives in this moment, a legacy no storm can erase.